However, back to today's eponymous podcast. What is our integrated skills approach to teaching grammar? Everyone, you're going to love this one. Bartek, tell us all about it.
Dictogloss, guys.
Hello, here we are. This is the Integrated Skills podcast, and we are back on the YouTube airwaves once again with a very interesting podcast for you today on what I would call an eponymous with this podcast approach to teaching grammar, which your students are going to love, which you're going to love teaching, which you're going to love creating. And as ever, we have my wonderful friend Barry Narak all the way from Bangkok, Thailand, to help take us through it today. Barry, how's things with yourself today?
All good, Fergus. Happy to be back. And yeah, I guess let's just jump right into it.
For sure. And as I mentioned from the outset, this is, I am one for I guess interesting Lexus. This is an eponymous. It shares the name with the podcast, with I guess the approach that we're able to take with this.
Are you showing off, Fergus? Eponymous, whatever, man. Just give it the name. What's it called again? Native speakers, showing off their vocabulary.
Well, Bartek, funny that you should say it, because this definitely raises a very if I may go on one of my little Fergy tangents, this is definitely a polemic topic within our field, that of the native speaker and the non-native speaker, and yourself being a top-notch non-native speaker, and myself being an aspiring native speaker teacher. I think we can definitely cover this topic in one of our upcoming podcasts. In fact, let's do it in an upcoming one. So if you're watching, please do hit that like, share, subscribe button, and hit the little bell notification so that you get notifications when we do drop that native speaker polemic discussion from our good selves. However, back to today's eponymous podcast. So what is our integrated skills approach to teaching grammar? Everyone, you're going to love this one. Bartek, tell us all about it.
Dictogloss, guys. I've been a great fan of this approach for many years, and I've actually learned a lot from people that I've come across while traveling around the world, and they've showed me different ways of doing this. And I do believe it's fantastic because it requires from students to use 4 skills: speaking, listening, writing, and reading. And it's just one and only. I can't think of any other activity that actually encourages students to use 4 skills. So I think it's brilliant.
It's so naturally integrated skills.
Exactly,
as well.
exactly.
Like it has to be like that. Yeah.
So, So we're not going to really talk about it too much. We're just going to run you through it. So, Fergie, you're going to be my guinea pig for the first 2 stages of the lesson. And yeah, let's just do this. Are you ready?
For sure. Looking forward to it.
All right. So, today, I'm going to tell you a story about a very special holiday. Fergie, are you ready?
I'm born ready, Barty. Born ready.
That was my line, Fergus. Come on. I can't believe you took it away from me. Anyway, sorry, guys. So, listen, telling stories is wonderful. It's natural. People get engaged. But of course, especially when you tell a story to students, you really have to think about those initial stages. You have to get them thinking. Perhaps you have to pre-teach some vocabulary. I mean, Fergus doesn't need to learn new vocabulary, but at least I will get him thinking about my story. Because, by the way, he doesn't know what I'm going to talk about. So I hope it goes well, right?
Don't.
Because he's got no idea what I'm going to do with him.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's look at image number 1. A very special
beautiful.
holiday.
Look
So,
at that
you know,
scenery.
the minute you show images, it's an opportunity for you actually to extract some information. Not only you pre-teach vocabulary, but you get students to describe what they can see. And it doesn't matter what level you are at, it's always fun. So, Fergus, what can you see in the first image, please?
Well, it definitely looks like the west of Ireland. I'm joking. I'm joking. It looks like somewhere tropical. One of those really highly desired, beautiful destination holiday locations with this beautiful jetty out to a kind of a like a thatched roof kind of structure. It just looks idyllic, and I would love to spend a week or two on holidays there.
Wow, lovely. There we go. So, you know, hopefully I aroused your interest and you're looking forward to the next step. Let's look at the image number 2. So, what can you see?
Well, of course, who doesn't know about the Sydney Opera House? This is one of, I guess, the 7 modern wonders of the world. It's one of the most iconic buildings located in Sydney, Australia. And actually, fun fact, where I live in Nova Scotia is the 2nd deepest natural port in the world, and the deepest natural port in the world is Sydney, Australia.
Ah, interesting.
So the Sydney Opera House sits on 2, I guess you could call them Wikipedia facts.
Have you been to Australia, Fergus?
Never.
Ah, okay.
Never.
So you might enjoy the story that I have to tell you later on. If you haven't been to Australia, hopefully you will find the story enjoyable. Let's look at the next image. What can you see? What's the activity? Because it's all about the activity, yes.
Well, here again in Canada, this is a kind of national pastime, hiking. I've definitely embraced this one since I've moved to the true north. Hiking is getting out into nature and just getting a really great burn on, going just moving your body for hours and hours, taking in nature, beautiful. And then kind of like juxtaposed with it are these stunning beaches. It kind of takes me back to the first image, but from a more kind of like a aerial perspective. It would be a really fantastic end to a hike to arrive at. To hike for hours and hours and end at one of these beaches and then just jump right into the ocean to cool off.
Lovely. And let's look at the last image now, Fergus.
Well, this is what it's all about, right? And this is what we've been
Nice
missing,
one.
these past months of COVID times, enjoying time with friends. Like, it's what life's all about. Right?
Can't
And
beat that, can you?
The Bartek right at the center of it, and the life and soul of the party as always.
My dear friends. Anyway, I don't want to say too much because the idea was only to, get you thinking about my story. But before we continue, and this is ideally what you should do with your students, you elicit some vocabulary, you get them thinking about what's about to come, activating schemata, as you will, if we want to use the terminology. And the next step, and I really think students get into this, is before I tell you a story, tell me what you think happens in my story. So what happened on my holiday, Fergus? I'll let you think about it. Put the images together and tell me your version of the story.
Well, given that we've seen the Sydney Opera House, I'm going to geolocate you in Australia. I guess you're find yourself out in the wilderness, maybe in the outback, as they refer to it out there, on a hike, and maybe your destination was to find yourself at a community or maybe even a resort or something at a beautiful beach. And to meet up with some friends and have some good times with friends.
Yeah. All right. So obviously it's pretty straightforward. It's up to you how you do this. Yeah. But It gets people thinking, and students or participants, will create their own story before they actually learn what really happened. Okay, Fergus, are you ready for the next stage? So, I'm just gonna ask you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I don't want you to take notes. You just listen and try to remember as much as you can. So what do you have to do, Fergus?
Have to just remember as much as I can. Take it all in.
Can you take notes?
No, I think I'm just listening.
Okay, very good. So listen very carefully. Okay, 3 years ago, I went to visit my friend in Sydney. We decided to explore the eastern coast of Australia. We started off in the Blue Mountains, where we went for long hikes and enjoyed the fresh, crisp air it has to offer. Afterwards, we traveled north towards Nelson Bay. There, we went snorkeling in pristine waters and indulged in long walks along the many stunning beaches. We then headed south and stayed at his holiday house near Lake Tabari. Every day we cooked delicious food and drank fabulous wine. The time I spent with my dear friend and his family was unforgettable. I can't wait to get back and do it all over again. All right, Fergus, here comes the next stage. Let's check how good your memory is. Go on. Using your memory only, of course, you don't have notes, you don't have anything. In this case, you're going to do it all alone. But of course, if we were to do this with students, you put them in groups ideally. And it's a fun activity. People love memory games. So my next question is, I would like you to try and retell my story and try to include as many details as you can and try to be as precise as you can.
Okay. Well, seeing as this is just you and me, I'm going to do it in the second person. So, you went to Australia with a friend and you decided to explore the east coast of Australia. And you started off, if I remember correctly, in the Blue Mountains. And I remember your wonderfully poetic description of the crisp air. And your intention then was to hike up along the east coast. And I forget, as soon as it went in this ear, it went out the other ear of the name of the next location. I remember something Cook's Land, something.
Did we go north or south after the Blue Mountains? What do you remember?
North.
Ah, okay, good. I mean, I'm not helping. Go on, keep going.
And then the idea was to go snorkeling in the pristine waters.
Uh-huh. Anything else?
And then to end up enjoying your time with friends, drinking some fabulous wine and having some unforgettable memories.
Lovely. That's pretty good.
I know I'm definitely leaving out chunks there.
Well, I mean,
short-term memory, but I think I got the bones of it. How did I do the birthday?
You did very well. It's impossible to remember everything, right? But how did you feel about actually doing this? Because guys, just to let you know, I mean, Fergus, that's the first time he has heard this story. I think it's pretty obvious. So how did you feel about trying to retell my story?
I felt a couple of things. I felt, oh, flip. Why didn't I remember this one detail or that detail? But I felt like nicely challenged. Like I was like really kind of scanning through my memory to try and pull out everything I could, because like, I don't know, the challenge was nicely pitched to me that I wanted to do it. I was motivated. I was like, okay, I want to show how much I can remember here, that my memory's intact. I like the way that you told the story. It created a pretty vivid image in my mind. You did transport me to Australia. So I was kind of, I had an image that, in fact, what I was doing, I was describing this mental image that I had.
Lovely.
And I enjoyed being transported there.
And hopefully, students feel the same way, especially when they work in groups. It's obviously depending on the level of the students, you make it as challenging or as easy as you wish, but it has to be still challenging. Ideally, of course, here I didn't pre-teach any complex vocabulary because Fergus is familiar with this. But if I was to pre-teach some vocabulary, maybe I should ask you, Fergus, which keywords would you pre-teach to students before doing this? Because some vocabulary is quite complex, so you have to help students along.
Yeah, I guess my own approach to Dictogloss, I'm a bit of a purist in some ways, that
okay.
I tend to not pre-teach anything.
Oh, interesting.
To give that opportunity as well, not just to not just again the macro integrated skills, but the integrated sub skills. So the one sub skill I'm thinking of really is the inferring meaning from context.
I like that.
So for example, like your aim here is to teach grammar, not to teach vocab per se, but of course they're going to pick up on the new vocab. I wouldn't necessarily call it blocking items, because in some ways everything is a blocking item if you get hung up in it, but if you don't draw attention to it, it doesn't block you from completing the task.
Interesting.
You can still, you still got this mental image that you're just trying to reconstruct with your own language and as much of the language as you can remember. But the inferring meaning from context part that I'm thinking of is, imagine something like, well, the two that just jump out to me, crisp air and pristine waters that you mentioned, like, so those two really nice adjectives. I think those are all the way up to like C2 level kind of Lexis. Just the last point that I was just going to say in it, that like if I had the feeling, okay, they might get hung up in that and miss the point of reconstructing the text, maybe I might choose something like that. But again, of course, it's all like level driven as well.
Yeah.
So making it approximately appropriate, graded to the level. But no, in general, myself doing Dictogloss, I almost never pre-teach any vocab.
Oh, okay.
And like, if those things, I want to give the opportunity as well for learner autonomy to grow as well. So like I said, to really cultivate that. And then, if they're still stuck in it afterwards, it creates the teachable moment, so I can, do all the usual things, elicit and concept check. So crisp air, was I describing a positive sensation, and does crisp air, do you think it means fresh air or not so fresh air?
Yeah, you can do it later as well, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, if they still, of course, I'm not going to totally back off and not give them the opportunity to learn this great language that I've brought, but like I said, I like to give the learners as much opportunity as possible to
Gotcha.
Stand on their own 2 feet, as
Okay.
it were. But it's a personal approach to doing it. But sorry, you were going to add in your stuff there as well.
Yeah, no, but I like this, to be honest with you. See, this is why it's interesting, because we do things differently. But let's move on to the next stage, and then we can have a follow-up discussion, of course, as always. So the next stage, obviously, I'm not going to do this with you, Fergus. I just wanted to give a quick model for the first 2 stages. The next stage, of course, is students listen to the same text again. This time, of course, they can take notes. What's important is you really have to make it clear by eliciting that it's impossible to write full sentences. So you can check with your students, can you write full sentences? The answer is obvious, no. So what are you going to do? What are you going to write? Obviously, the answer is keywords. Lovely. Listen and write some keywords.
So Bartek, I have a question there, and like again about your approach, because this is really interesting. It's the same activity, but there's a number of approaches to doing it. So when you're doing the second reading, so the first time you read it, you just read it right the way through, and you have to try and remember as much as possible and talk about it with their partners to kind of like create the picture. But the second time, do you read it all the way through, or do you read it in sentences with pauses between each sentence?
All the way through at a natural speed. I don't change the speed. Of course, depending on the level. I mean, this is high level, like you said, it would be C2. So here, definitely, I wouldn't be. I mean, you pause naturally, okay, but you really don't want to make it too easy, because otherwise, what's the point? What's the point?
Well, if I can offer a
Go on.
suggestion, and this is something that I've definitely done because I have done Dictogloss from A1 to C2. I've done it at every level.
Yeah.
And at the lower
So have I.
levels, on the second reading, something that I do like to do is, so I tended to keep my Dictoglosses to 5 sentences
Oh, okay.
approximately. But you can have probably 7 or 8 might be a maximum.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
what I did sometimes is when I was setting up the second reading, I will say, okay, this time I'm going to read each sentence, and I'm going to give a 5-second pause between each sentence, and in that moment you can write notes.
Makes sense.
But then I would say, and I would do this in front of the students. I would count how many words there were in the sentence, and I would, with my tone and with my body language, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's 4. So you have 5 seconds. Do you think it's enough time to listen, understand, and write every word perfectly in 5 seconds? And of course, it's a way of instruction checking. And the
Yes, of
students
course.
will say, no, teacher, impossible. And then I said, yes, I agree. So what can you write in 5 seconds? And then they give the instructions themselves. And they say, well, important words, keywords, whatever way the students describe it.
You really have to elicit this from them. So, actually your way is even, you're kind of helping them come up with the right answer a little bit more, right? Maybe, but you do have to.
So I think, there's totally merit for both approaches because, a minute ago, I was taking the purest approach in terms of the pre-teaching vocab, and I was like, no, let them have it. Now you're taking the purest approach to the second reading where you have no pauses and you kind of like get them to take notes as they're listening. So, I think, people watching this, they can mix and match, which makes most sense for their students, for the grading that they need to do.
Well, what I think is important to mention here is that, of course, like you said, you can do this activity with any level. Minimum, you don't minimum preparation. But what's important is you have to adapt to suit the level of your students, and you have to be aware of this, because if you don't, students A are not gonna enjoy it, B they're not gonna complete it, C they're gonna hate it. And you really have to be aware of your students' needs and skills. Otherwise, you're killing the activity. It's as simple as this. Yeah. So you have to adapt. So obviously with low levels, what I do, I don't pause for 5 seconds, but perhaps next time I will.
Give it a go, see what happens.
Exactly.
And maybe set up the instructions, like I said, elicit the instructions from the learners. So 5 seconds, 15 words, it's obvious, they'll figure it out. It's obviously enough time. If you do it like that.
Yeah. So the next stage would be, sometimes I do it, sometimes I skip it. Again, it depends on the students, but I think it helps. What I do after the second stage, after they have written some keywords, I give them 1 or 2 minutes. I put them in small groups to compare what keywords they have written. Just to, so that this collaboration, you really promote this collaboration amongst the students, which is key. It's like, this is what we are doing. Teamwork. We've always been working as a team since we met, native, non-native. I mean, it's just, it doesn't matter.
And it's another thing that I really, again, if I can just get back in that tangent for a second, I want to discuss in our talk about everything that a native speaker has to learn from non-natives. Even though I have what I think may be a kind of, to use the word again, polemic point of view on the whole topic. But, what I really, going back to the Dictogloss, what I really like about, this kind of way of brick by brick building it. The first time they listen, they kind of like just use their memory, just talk about, they haven't written anything, they just listen to integrating the skills. It's just listening and speaking, the first time around. Then the second time, it's listening and writing, the sub skill of note taking. And then then they taught. So now they've taken, they've listened to it. They've got a rough idea, compared their ideas, listened again, taken some notes, and they kind of like build a second story. I guess STOREY, the second level, onto the reconstruction of your story. And again, it's so collaborative as well. So not only is there, obviously learning from the prime resource, which is of course yourself, the teacher in the classroom, but also being able to exploit the other, I guess, almost as prime resources, their peer learning as well, because well,
Absolutely.
I have this idea, you have this idea, let's put them together. I think the grammar should be this, I think the grammar should be that, let's agree.
Yeah.
So it's very rich integrated skills.
Beautiful. Yeah. And obviously the last stage, you read it for the third time. Again, at this level, I wouldn't make any pauses. I would read at a natural speed. And then the final stage is, again, you put them in groups, and then you tell them. And usually the first time you do it, it comes as a shock, and you say, all right, guys, here was the fun part. Sorry. You have to reconstruct the whole text using your notes and memory. And of course, and then you ask them again. So guys, what do you have to do? Can you use your notes? Can you help each other? And one final thing. The idea is to make your version as close as possible to my version, because the winner gets a prize, or whichever way you want to do this.
That's key. And I think as well, again, I guess you do this as well. Like, I always make sure clear in the instructions that, okay, you're working in a group of 3, but you need to elect one person to be the writer.
Right, yeah.
Because I do it like that, because it forces the collaboration. And if they're having difficulty choosing who's going to be the writer, I'll just go around and elect usually the person in the middle. You be the writer, you be the writer, you be the writer, because it forces communication, right?
Yeah.
And it forces collaboration.
And it's natural. And obviously, I think it's important to make sure that the other students are on task. But one way of doing this is, okay, so you're the writer, you are responsible for sharing notes. So you look at your notes and you collaborate together. Everybody has a task.
Time permitting, what I've done myself sometimes in the past is I've kind of followed a kind of like macro process writing approach. So then once they have done their reconstruction, I'll say group A, give your text to group B give your text to group C give your text to group A, and I give them a little actual correction scheme, like maybe G for grammar, V for vocab, S for spelling, something like that. And then I'll tell them, take it back and present the corrections that you suggest. And I usually give actually one as well for content, that like if the idea is off or something.
Oh,
so
okay.
I get them like the peer correct as well. And, of course, all the time I'm monitoring as well. Do you include this as well?
I do it differently, actually, because usually I find that you kind of run out of time towards the end. And what I do is, again, you mentioned this, time permitting. So if maybe next time, if I have extra time, I will do it this way. What I do at the end is they definitely swap. So A gives the answers to B, B to C, etc. And then I project my version. And what they do is they only highlight their mistakes. In this way, the group with the highest number of mistakes or differences loses. So the group that has the lowest number of differences or mistakes wins, and I don't know, you can use dojos to reward them or any other
When I've done it, I've given them a kind of like self scoring system. So I give like, for each sentence, give yourself a score out of 5. Give yourself 3 points if the content is the same. So if the idea is the same, give yourself 1 point if the grammar is generally the same, and give yourself another 1 point if the vocab, or no, let's say 2 points, 2 points and 1 point, something like that, so that they give themselves a self-correction that's kind of like geared towards success, but still kind of honest as
Oh,
well,
okay, fair
so,
enough. I like that.
so they can gauge themselves against each sentence as well. And yeah, so it's interesting to see slightly different,
Yeah.
but the same approaches overall to these things. I'm thinking back to the days and it just depends on your context and where you're teaching. I remember days back in Dublin. Lessons would be an hour and 50 minutes, over 2 hours with a 10-minute break in the middle, so there was
You have lots of time.
ample time to do every stage. And and actually, sorry, I was going to mention, before I project the story again so that they can compare and self-correct, I would have monitored while they were doing their peer corrections. And with my notebook, I would have taken just a few samples of some of the sentences that they've come up with, a few samples for errors, a few samples of good uses of language.
Of course, yeah.
Thrown it up on the board just to do a kind of a delayed correction.
Interesting, of
But
course.
again, it's time permit. We're saying all of these really nice ideas, and you might have a 45-minute lesson and you can't
Exactly.
do
So
all
you
of
have
those
to,
things.
but you see, the bottom line is that you can always do it in the follow-up sessions, and it would be important. There is one of the things that I strongly believe in, from my experience as a teacher trainer, and it's as a teacher, sometimes people just forget to include that stage in their lesson. Feedback, guys. If you run out of time, fine. But you have to come back to this. You have to include it in the next session. Otherwise, what was the point in doing this if you don't give them any feedback?
That's the key. You hit the nail on the head. What's the point? And put yourself into the student's shoes. My teacher gave me this task, but didn't tell me how I did. Why did I do it?
Exactly. Yeah. So
wonderful, Bartek. Look, I love it. And it's great to revisit Dictogloss. Absolutely one of my favorite activities to do in a language lesson, yet it's totally skills based. So it's language systems, like it's grammar or vocabulary, or I guess lex is probably better, because you can use it just for discrete items. You can use it for idioms. You can use it for
anything,
any aspect of language. You could use it even for functional language.
Anything. That's why it's amazing.
You could even extend it out in the end as a kind of like an introduction to pronunciation as well. To giving exposing them to the model and seeing how they do, and then working on pronunciation at the end. You can really do anything with it. But it's again, it's grounded in skills, and that's like how we use language in the real world. But we're taking this deep dive into the language systems, whether that be, as we say, grammar, lexis, functions, or maybe even at a kind of like maybe a little bit of a stretch, pronunciation. I really love it. I really hope all you guys watching really take this in. Sorry, Bartek, you have a point.
Well, let's not forget about the follow-up stages. So depending on the time, what I do is obviously that you have to find time at some point, maybe not within the same lesson, to focus on analysis. Let's not forget that you cannot miss this opportunity actually to use guided discovery. Don't tell them what grammar you're talking about. Get them to analyze it. So you show the text and you say, okay, so what grammar structure is it? Past simple. Lovely. Underline the examples of regular past verbs. Well done. What about irregular? Lovely. How do we make questions? How do we make negatives? Do you know what I'm saying? And they
have your concept checking questions ready, etc.
And again, they're working together to work out the rules. Guided discovery is one of my favorite approaches. So, again, they're working together and they work out the rules. We learn by doing. I strongly believe we are supposed to be the facilitators. Get them to do most of the work. I mean, of course, guys, I've been teaching for many, many years, and gosh, it took me so many years actually to realize it and then put it into practice. But now, that's how I believe it should be done. It goes for teaching, it goes for teacher training. I mean, I couldn't highlight this strongly enough.
Well, and this is definitely, you raise yet another really interesting talking point, which we definitely have to dive deeper in a further podcast, because I have also been a very strong proponent of, high student autonomy and discovery methods. However, I'm going to use that. I think that sometimes a little bit of the baby gets thrown out with that bath water. And what I mean is, and let's discuss this in greater depth, that yes, it's fantastic and highly motivating to get learners to take this discovery approach. However, sometimes teachers become anonymous. They stop having any kind of teacher role, and it's do it all yourself. And I know that's not what you're saying, because as you say, you've been a teacher for a very long time, so you recognize, those moments where you're needed, where you can jump in, give them enough that they need so that they don't get stuck and they can continue along, and course correct them, and give them that little bit of error correction. But like many things, and we can see this in our world today, it's kind of like, the train was coming into the station of kind of good ideas, but then it just like shot on through, that like with the discovery approach, there's so much that's great there, but I think we need to remember that as teachers, we need to be experts too. So that's why I'm saying, like I mentioned there, concept checking questions, which is a teacher-fronted, not teacher-centered, teacher-fronted, student-centered approach, which can be used in conjunction with the guided discovery. Give them the guided discovery task, but be ready as the teacher, because like maybe they're just lost in the guided discovery task. Maybe they're just banging their head against the wall, and they need you. They need you to take the reins and get things back on course.
Again, it all boils down to how well you know the students. This is your priority, and you have to be a good observer. If you can't see that they're lost and that they need support, well, you're not doing the right thing, and you have Absolutely. To you have to be a good reader. It's a tough job. Monitoring is crucial, and I absolutely agree, Fergus. Also, one other point, which a very highly skilled teacher trainer made me aware of a while back. Where I'm based, it's a cultural thing. So, you can't really jump into guided discovery on day one, because your students are simply gonna freak out. In Thailand, traditionally, every lesson is extremely teacher-centered. And if you, on the first day of the semester with a new bunch of students, start doing guided discovery, and you sit back at your desk with your feet up, I'm exaggerating, and let them do all the work, they're gonna complain. They're gonna say, hey, my teacher is not doing anything.
This is a great point to raise, Bartek, because of course, the Integrated Skills podcast has people from all over the world watching. So maybe, again, could you drop down in the comments and let myself and Barry know, what is it like in your context?
Exactly.
Where are you teaching in the world? Do you believe that your students would respond to this very discovery approach, or do you think that the student's expectation of learning is much more teacher-led? And I just to like really make that difference, there is a difference between teacher-centered and teacher-fronted or teacher-led. You can still have a student-centered lesson, but with you as a teacher at the front of the class, and it isn't all TTT, teacher talking time. You can still like quite involve your students. Bartek, look at. We could really talk about Dictogloss until the cows come home, but I'm going to let you have one last point to wrap it all up for us, and then we're going to just let people know about a couple of things we have coming up, and we'll take it from there. So wrap things up for us there, Bartek. Last points on Dictogloss.
I think, you just experiment with this. But, I think it's important to, the first stage, show some visuals, get students thinking. The next one, you read for the first time, they try to remember, then they retell the story. in groups. You read it for the second time. They write some keywords. Maybe they compare keywords, and then finally you read it for the third time. And after that, it's time for them to reconstruct the whole text. After that, obviously, time for analysis. Okay, guys, I hope that was useful. Thanks, Fergus, for bouncing off ideas. So much as there was so much going on. I mean, I'm definitely gonna experiment with your ideas next time.
It's just like a teacher's room, right? These are the conversations we have in teacher's room. I just finished my B1 class and I did a Dictogloss. Oh, I did a Dictogloss last week. How did I do it? And that's, the beautiful osmosis of ideas that happens in teachers' rooms in schools, right? That, you have an idea, you hear another way of doing it, you mix it all together, you come out with a better way of doing it. And, who benefits in the end? Your students, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Better lessons. So, Barty, look at really love this episode. Let us know in the comments below. Have you tried Dictogloss yourself? Are you encouraged to try it now? And if you have any questions, please do let us know. You can find myself and Bartek on social media. You can find our social media just below here now. So we're both on Facebook and Instagram. You can find Bartek on LinkedIn, and you can find myself on Twitter as well. So please do reach out if you're interested in a training consultation. Please do email us as well. You can see our email on screen. And please, as I mentioned many times, hit that like, share, and particularly that little bell button so that you get notifications when we have future podcasts, and we will have future podcasts for you, dear YouTube teacher. We shall see you, and we shall see Barty and his funky dance moves in a future integrated skills podcast. This is Fergus signing off. Bye bye.
See you guys. Bye bye.